Downs Gaming and Hotel. We work extremely hard to make your experience here convenient, safe, and fun.
I love Batavia Downs Gaming.
We love it!
I love Batavia Downs Gaming.
We don't just like Batavia Downs Gaming, we love Batavia Downs Gaming.
Batavia Downs Gaming, Hotel, and Racetrack. We not only want you to like coming here, we want you to love coming here.
Folks, how are we doing? It is not the show where it's wrestling with your conscience. It is not the show where it's wrestling with your budget. It is wrestling with emotion, and we have got a ton going on, as you might expect, on the road to WrestleMania and coming out of an AEW pay-per-view. We'll be talking Dynasty and the reaction. We'll be talking Kevin Owens dropping out and Randy Orton's new opponent. We'll be talking CM Punk's favor and much more, but let me get my inner circle in here. We've got Slick L, Slick Saturday, and the head of the table, Michael J. Partham. So let's start out the gate with it. Let's talk some Dynasty. I was disappointed. I talked to Slick. We talked about it a little bit on Monday. I mean, I know that people are trying to make sense of it in reverse, that somehow it makes sense that the Young Bucks are on the Death Rider side. That doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not buying it. And I make every excuse for AEW in the book. So I think this could potentially be trashy. They could save it. They could make it classy. This could be epic. They could make it the biggest faction of like douchebags that you want to see get beat ever. And that would be what we're getting here. But Parthy, where did you feel with this Dynasty ending? How do you feel going into tonight's Dynamite?
Well, it's nothing I didn't predict, mind you. I mean, both you and I, Maniac, we knew that AEW was just going to dig their feet in the sand and just take this thing to All In. But I mean, the way that they did it, I thought there was just going to be the same old, tomfoolery and skullduggery and shenanigans and whatever words we want to usually describe F finishes, as we might say. But we've been predicting the Bucks to come back, the Elite to come back in some shape or form for maybe a couple of months now. We thought that, and as cringe as it was going to be sounding, we thought that the Elite were going to come back to save AEW. They were going to be the ones to oppose the Death Riders, even though they, of course, 1 year ago were the first faction to try and take over AEW, and that fell on its face. But, everybody is saying, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you doing anything? As they're all running to the ring, trying to attack the Death Riders and getting, pounded into the mat one by one. And then they just turn around, they lose the tag titles and immediately start shredding papers and just bolt out of town, never to be seen for months and months on end. So now they're here. And I don't know that they're necessarily helping the Death Riders, because the only way that would make sense is if they take off the hoods and say, it was me, Austin. It was us all along. They were behind the Death Riders all along. Like they're the stand-in for what Shane McMahon was supposedly rumored to be or something. The only other way I can make sense of this is if they're just trying to go after Swerve because he's Hangman's rival, and they still consider Hangman their friend, and they want to do him a favor. And he seemed like he was in conflict over fulfilling his vow to never have Hangman win the title again. And they step in and it's like, hey, we're just helping a friend out by, you said you were going to promise to do this, and we thought you would like this. But Hangman, obviously, after his confrontation with Swerve, and Swerve, sort of coming to terms with everything they both done to each other, Hangman sort of, reconsidered. His rage sort of was dampened. And all of a sudden, he was seeing clearly, like, okay, I still hate Swerve, but maybe I hate Moxley even more. And he did give Moxley the dead eye in the middle of the ring. So at least he got a shot in on the Death Riders, which tells you where his priorities are all of a sudden. But I don't know what says that. Obviously, the Bucks were there. The Elite was there when the Death Riders were starting to take over. But just because they were there doesn't mean that they're involved. Doesn't mean that they're a part of the storyline. And the whole thing of this is, well, it was two things. It was Dynasty running too long. The main event bell, I believe, started at 11:52 p.m. on a Sunday, mind you, on a Sunday. Maybe we could have gotten away with it if it was a Saturday and we didn't have work the next day or whatever we have going on. The other thing about it is, Moxley and Tony Khan and everybody there think that this is the bloodline. I will tell you why it's not the bloodline. Because it's two-dimensional. It's TOO, TWO dimensional. Two-dimensional. Because you had characters in the bloodline. You had Sami Zayn, who was the outsider that wanted to feel like he belonged. You had Jey Uso, who was the right-hand man who was feeling, made small by Roman Reigns.
They're also all related in the bloodline. Let's just say that too.
Well, almost all right. Paul Heyman was also not technically related, but he's the loyal indentured servant of Roman Reigns, who he fired at one time because he was conflicted with his loyalty to Roman and Brock Lesnar, and then he rehired him. Maybe it was the plan all along. But there was conflict within the bloodline. There was emotional stories within the bloodline, even as that whole thing was going on for 4.5 years, whatever. The one moment that we got out of the Death Riders that might have had some character development was when Adam Copeland took on Wheeler Yuta on the Go Home show before Cope took on Moxley for the championship, the first match, of course, at the pay-per-view. And Cope shakes Yuta's hand and says, "That's respect." And then Moxley comes out and says, "Why didn't you destroy him? Why didn't you beat him?" or whatever. And Yuta pie faces Moxley and he walks off into the night. Cope didn't destroy him. He just got in his mind, you thought. And people were in that arena in Cincinnati were chanting, "Yuta, Yuta." Of all people, they were chanting for Wheeler Yuta. And you thought you actually got an emotional moment out of this whole Death Riders thing. And then a few days later, they go to the payper-view. Wheeler Yuta shows up. He fakes like he's going to hit Moxley and he goes and hits Cope, and it was their plan all along. So they just, they just washed that all away. That could have been the one moment where you saw some kind of character development, and they just said, "Nah, screw it. It was a double cross all along." So that's the reason why it hasn't even gone a full year, but people are already sick of it, and they allowed the Bloodline storyline to go for 4.5 years because they can milk so much emotional depth out of it, so much character development out of it, and they have not done this with the Death Rider storyline, and that's why people wanted to end before it gets to the climax at the stadium show at all end. But I've gone on long enough. Slick, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen people saying that they're definitely treating it like the bloodline. And as far as the Bucks, I mean, yeah, it was only a matter of time. I certainly didn't think they were going to come back and necessarily save AEW, but I certainly didn't think they were going to come back and double down on the Death Riders either. And to be honest, it had been long enough until it was pointed out to us today or yesterday, I believe, that when the Bucks did leave abruptly, the Death Riders were causing all kinds of havoc, and they kind of refused to even get involved, even as like the AEW position EVPs that they were holding, where they were in charge of everything. They kind of just weren't doing anything about it. And so there might be some story there. Obviously, we all feel, even if there is story, it doesn't really change how we all feel. Like the fact that they're doubling down on this Death Riders thing, and the Bucks of all people are coming and screwing Swerve doesn't really make sense. It would if they were siding with Hangman, but Hangman for once is going to help Swerve out and help him go over Moxley to win the championship. So it's not like the Bucks have anything to do with Hangman here. I thought maybe if they came back to the AEW, it would be for that, or possibly a Kenny alliance, which also wouldn't make sense if they all of a sudden just came back as good guys. But here we are, and they're helping Jon Moxley, of all people, after just walking out while he was wreaking complete havoc.
He took a hammer to Brandon Cutler's hand. Their indentured servant, who I guess they don't really care about anyway because they treat him like crap as it is. So maybe they don't care one way or another.
Yeah, but he can't hold the camera now. Broken hand.
Right.
That's like his only job. That was his value to the group. So they definitely think about.
I mean, on Monday, real quick, Maniac. I did say on Monday. I mean, like the one positive you could get out of this is Bucks versus Swerve and Hangman could be a good program, but there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done, and that would even kind of just stray away from the fact that they just helped Jon Moxley beat Swerve for no reason. So go ahead, Maniac.
No, I just think like it's not a crazy take to say that, like, with like the exception of like the OG NWO in WCW, like no faction has ever been successful for like a year plus, just like running over everybody. Like at some point there has to be some comeuppance. There has to be some guys, even if you don't lose their titles. I totally get that, but there has to be some consequences. Something like the Attitude Era. I can't say this enough. Everyone was beating everybody every other night. Like, and yeah, sometimes championships got held for like 26 days, and like that was kind of fucked up. But again, I think that's more of a recipe for success when you have variance versus, again, what have we seen? The Death Riders just running over everybody. When I look back on it, I think like shooting the title to Danielson was a mistake too. Like kind of looking back on it. I know that they wanted to get him his run and that he got his last fight, but this would have been way better if Danielson said that if I lose at All In, I'm going to like retire. And Swerve had beaten him. And then the Death Riders attacked him and Swerve to end All In. And they do exactly what they did to Danielson when they beat him in the pay-per-view. They put the bag on him. They do everything. They basically kill him. And that's Danielson's like last appearance. So with that said, all that rant, at some point they have to get come up. AEW just sticks with these storylines too long. It was the same thing with the Devil. And then, you know, when you start having stuff like at this point, you mentioned like the Young Bucks coming back as good guys. Like, you know, they would just leave as bad guys and come back as good guys. Like, even though it really wouldn't make any sense whatsoever in the storyline, AEW has kind of unfortunately reached that level. 7-1 times. We acknowledge you. You say, I love Trainwreck, acknowledge you. Shout out Buffalo Origin Story. Shout out Paulina on Instagram. But you look at, again, like all these storylines, all these things, like there's just no consequences in AEW anymore. There's no like fluidity to the storylines. There's no continuity. Like at this point, does anybody even remember that Adam Cole and FTR like attacked the Young Bucks for no reason? Like right before, like that was supposed to be. That was supposed to be a massive. That was supposed to be a massive like seismic activity. I think that was like the end of 2021, if I remember correctly. But like, not surprisingly, that was right about when things started to go downhill, when things didn't have consequences, and when all of a sudden, you know, shit goes a little haywire. So I don't think they've lost the message completely. They're still doing enough to make Max happy. And even if the ticket sales are plummeting, which we've talked about in the chat, like they have $600 million of runway to figure it out over the next 3 years. So we'll see what goes on there. But yeah, it's going to be. Are you excited for Dynamite tonight, though? We didn't even get into that. Seems like there might be some.
Oh, I meant to say too, when we were
it?
talking Death Riders, another tone deaf part that just proves on everything we were just saying. Jon Moxley has a one-on-one match tonight against Shibata.
Katsuyori Shibata.
Yes. Like what? Why?
And the rest of the ops are taking on the rest of the Death Riders in a tag match.
See, like that kind of makes sense. But Jon Moxley one-on-one match without the title against Shibata after that reaction to that ending of that pay-per-view?
I'm just waiting. I don't think there's been a segment announced, but I'm hoping at least that we get the Young Bucks out here. They'll probably get out there in like the first segment so that they don't have any kind of like, you know, ratings drop in the middle of the show or whatever the heck. But I'm very interested in to see how they're going to spin this. I'm interested to see because they left before Kenny Omega got back, and now they're both in the company actively, you know, on TV at the same time. How are they going to even, you know, bother mentioning Kenny? Is Kenny going to even bother mentioning them after all the stuff they did to him and all like, you know, pouring intestines on like the birthday cake and things of that nature?
CM Punk really screwed all this up.
He ruined a good thing.
It's unfortunate for sure. I mean,
he pulled back the curtain. That's all he did.
Yeah, you can't help but point to him and look at the problem. Speaking of pointing to him and looking at the problem, I mean, Kevin Owens injured. I mean, you want to talk about just an unfortunate series of events. Like it wasn't. I'm old enough to remember when Kevin Owens was pile driving Cody Rhodes in the Atlanta parking lot after a PLE. But now we got him injured. Hoping that he feels better. Like I hope he feels better. Hope that he's just healthy. Obviously, we're talking spinal cord, we're talking neck, we're talking everything. No joke. But with that said, at the end of the day, someone has to get RKO'd in a spectacular fashion and defeated for a 1-2-3 at WrestleMania. Any candidates that you guys got?
I've seen some rumors. The obvious ones right away. I saw people speculating Nick Aldis just because he took the RKO and got the announcement. I don't see them throwing Nick Aldis into any wrestling scenario anytime soon, let alone that first match back being a WrestleMania stage. Another rumor I've seen is Sami Zayn, but Sami and KO, the last time they were involved, left on bad terms. So that wouldn't make too much sense for me. There's been the speculation about Aleister Black's return to the WWE. I think that would be my top pick, even though we do have reports as well about Rusev walking around backstage at WWE HQ. But it's tough because if you have a returning guy against Randy Orton, like Randy Orton, you want to talk about like people that represent WrestleMania. He's one of them. So having him take an L from a guy coming back on a return match would be quite.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the problem.
You want to kill all of Aleister Black's momentum in a flash. Have him come back at WrestleMania and get Randy Orton.
There's a big issue right there. You could throw an NXT guy into this situation, or maybe even like Andrade, Carmelo Hayes. But you got to make sense of this really quick because you're not working with much time anymore. Partham, what do you think?
Yeah, Aleister Black and Rusev were a couple of guys on my mind, but exactly as you pointed out, you're going to bring them back to lose to Randy Orton because Randy Orton is not going to job out to just a random opponent. I mean, Seth Rollins losing to a mystery opponent that turns out to be a returning Cody Rhodes. That I think that made all the sense in the world because you knew Cody was going to come in and be a star. I don't think Rusev or Aleister Black has that kind of credentiality coming back to the company again, like Cody Rhodes did. So the only thing that really makes sense to me is Nick Aldis because that goes back to him paying his next fine in advance, and Nick Aldis can get back in the ring, and it's nice for him to have a WrestleMania moment, and it's no shine off of him if he loses to Randy Orton at WrestleMania.
I mean, crazier things have happened. We did see Nigel McGuinness come back at All in Wembley. So you never say never.
That was kind of cinema, though.
Oh, it was awesome. Loved it.
All right. We'll be seeing what happens there. Okay, let me ask you this, though, real quick. I think at this point, it has to be some kind of like Randy Orton open challenge or like surprise. Like you can't say that it's going to be someone at this point.
They could keep.
They don't have enough runway.
They could spin Nick Aldis into being pissed about the RKO. You can't do that. You can't pay the fines and just can't pay fines all the time whenever you want. But I don't know. That would be silly. So I think you're right. I think it has to be some sort of pop.
Okay.
Well, they've been showing vignettes for Aleister Black for a few weeks now, or at least we suspect they are.
Yeah.
You have to think that they were going to bring him back at the Raw after WrestleMania, so they're going to move it up until WrestleMania and have him face Randy Orton only just to lose.
If you have another returnee in tow in Rusev, you could just kind of switcheroo, put Aleister into that situation, have Rusev be a Raw after Mania surprise, but I mean, are we even sure that's Aleister? What shows were these vignettes primarily on?
I think Raw.
Okay,
I like to think Raw.
I mean, they're just
people are
adding a lot
speculating
of
that he's
Raw
going to be a
like
new member of the Judgment Day.
Penta, like Ray Phoenix has come into the mix. I know, or was he on SmackDown?
Ray Phoenix is on SmackDown. Penta's on Raw.
Well, a lot of
joined by your friend, my friend, our friend, Jacob Micah. Mike, are you with us?
I'm here, I think.
Okay, you're here.
Maybe.
You're here. Real quick,
good.
We're talking Dynasty. We're talking KO's opponent. Catch us up in a minute here.
I mean, we'll find out a lot. I guess tonight we'll find out a lot more about how I feel about the direction of Dynasty if they have some follow up to it. But the feeling they left us with was a pretty bad one. I mean, it was a decent show altogether. No major complaints. Like, it was solid. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but you can't end a show like that. So we'll see how they follow it up. Some great matches, though. Tony Storm balled out. The Kenny Omega, the international title match was great. Ospreay and Kevin Knight put on a show. And then for Randy Orton, so it sucks for Kevin Owens. I really hope he's okay. But if it is his career, what a hell of a career. Randy Orton, can we get Nick Aldis in the ring? That RKO, that's what I want to see. I feel like it's time to speed that timeline up for Nick Aldis.
That's where our thoughts were going.
Yeah.
I agree.
I still have my reservations on that one, but that you have based on what we were just talking about, it seems you have options. So
they got options.
Yeah,
that's for sure. All right, and speaking of options, no shortage of blondes around the women's main event for WrestleMania, or Charlotte, Tiffany. No shortage of drama there either. So let's go to our resident expert on blondes and drama, Slick. Talk to me about Tiffany and Charlotte and this shoot. What's going on here? Talk to me about it.
I don't really know. This kind of came out of nowhere. This
We got breaking news.
Wow.
Rob Ryan returns to the program next week. He will be live on Wrestling with Emotion. Make sure you are tuning in next Wednesday, April 16th. Wrestling with Emotion will be live with the Prophet, Rob Ryan. All right, Slick, back to you, buddy.
He's coming. Oh,
Like Veer.
yeah,
Rob Ryan returns next week. That was electric.
we need that graphic more often. Yeah, but like I was saying, this kind of came out of nowhere. This feud has been interesting to me. Never been the biggest fan of Tiffy. Always felt intermediate about Charlotte. But this was feisty. I was caught off guard. Tiffy kind of with some horsepower, seemingly for no reason. The segment seemed to be going okay. You're treading like mild waters, sailing mild waters, and then the 0-3 shot, which seemed there was something else that had to end the segment because that was an absolute shoot, that 0-3 shot, and you could tell just based on how quick. Am I back?
Yeah, I think we lost you for a second. You could just tell
I
me
know, I
how
was
quick.
frozen or you were.
And
No,
then I
that's-
couldn't tell.
yeah,
It's always
so-
me, so I'm always like, so
No,
like,
it's okay. So you could just tell that it was a shoot shot because of how quickly Charlotte was to fire back at that response. She was clearly very offended with her own one, the Ludwig DMs. May I say, we need the clip in here too, by the way. No pop. Absolutely
people,
no pop.
Ernie with the meme about Ludwig Kaiser, the first guy to get accused of cheating, and just nobody believes this. It's insane. The absolute
good for him.
Wait.
I mean, just to be clear, Charlotte ain't no slouch.
just saying
Absolutely
she-
beautiful woman, but I mean, obviously,
No,
people
no, I have
think
nothing
fine in
against
a whole
her.
other
No,
regard. What do you got?
Nothing
What do you
against
got,
her
Michael?
looks, but her character is just yeah.
Maniac, if you could find Ludwig's response on Twitter, it should be in his replies. But yeah, this seems to be a trend for Charlotte, and not just historically, but lately, especially the virtual face-to-face interview that they had initially, where Charlotte was just stepping all over Tiffany's lines, and people thought Charlotte was just strong-arming Tiffany and just going into business for herself. But listen, this is not the first time we've seen this kind of behavior from Charlotte. You remember the title belt exchange, the Raw SmackDown Women's
Oh my
Championship
gosh,
exchanges?
that was so
Yeah, that was
such bit. That was like lame shit, is what I would say, dude. That's crazy. And just to be clear, despite being, like I would say, probably the best women's wrestler in the history of WWE, obviously, like Charlotte Flair. I mean, you just got to give credit where it's due. I don't think she's like fantastic on the mic. Like
No.
half of her
No,
shtick is just being like, I'm the shit, and then she always has Woo to lean on when she's like a face. Like,
the
like
Chicago
so when
crowd
you have
totally-
anybody going back
Yeah.
to her at all, like she shouldn't be like, putting anybody in a corner on the mic. She's got no superiority there at all.
She was totally shook by that Chicago crowd, basically giving her the Dominic Mysterio treatment. And see, Dom would just roll with it. And you would think a veteran like Charlotte, the daughter of Ric Flair, who's, the dirtiest player in the game, would be able to have the experience and, just the heritage just to know how to handle a hostile crowd. And she was just so shook that she actually said, even though she didn't ultimately, she said, Tiff, you have the last word, because she couldn't get a word in edgewise here.
Yeah, it's Charlotte, man. I don't know. She lets the ego get to her sometimes.
By the way,
Sometimes.
another incident to bring up, the little shoving match she had with Nia Jax when they just couldn't get on the same page in that thing, and they were just, bitch slapping each other. I don't know what the heck they were doing in that particular thing.
I will say, and this is something I have to give credit to the, let's just say, old regime. They presented Charlotte a lot better and put her in better positions to succeed than I think Triple H has. Triple H sending her out there with that promo like that. Like we've seen it for weeks. She really hasn't handled the crowd well since she came back. Like she tried that, first promo trying to talk as Ashley and talk to the crowd. And they didn't accept it right away. And she has never really adjusted. Like she's kind of adjusted and taken a little more heelish approach, but I feel like she wants everybody to come around to her still. And that's part of where the reaction comes last week, and like it's so childish too. Like she's like mocking Tiffany's voice at the end of it. It's like, what are we doing here? Is this a wrestling promo, or is it like 11-year-olds arguing in like a playground? Like, what are we talking about here?
I do feel like that first promo back, they were trying to have her be on more of a face side and like not
Absolutely.
100%.
heel going into that WrestleMania match. And then it seemed like there was one point in Charlotte's brain where she just went, fuck it, I'm about to light these people up.
Yeah. She's got, you know what? Charlotte's, we always say it's Cody, but Charlotte's kind of a homelander. Like, kind of like lives off the praise of the people. And like, and the second they start to turn on her, like it's fucking laser eyes, dude. Partham knows I'm right. That way, when you get nothing back from Partham, that is a confirmation. So, will be very interesting to see what Tiff and Charlotte do. I was equally interested and honestly a little surprised that we got the favor revealed this past Friday. I guess we weren't so surprised what it was. Anyone have a hot take on this one? Obviously, it was a pretty good segment on SmackDown.
All right. So
yeah, there he goes. Strap in.
Yeah. So this was the favor that everybody was expecting. So certain other things were speculated by me included, but having Paul Heyman in his corner, obviously, and Punk laid out the history of it, going all the way back to when Paul Heyman was first either quit or got fired, depending on who you believe, in 2006 after the whole December to Dismember fiasco with ECW. And Punk told the story about, what do I do now? And Heyman's reassuring him, hey, I'm going to walk you down the aisle at WrestleMania in the main event one day. And they even, when they had the video recap of it on SmackDown, I believe, no, it was on Raw. It was just on Raw. They put in that clip from 2013 where Paul Heyman again was saying, hey, one day I'm going to be with you in the main event of WrestleMania. So there's a lot of, history and, signposts in the past to draw on. It's not long-term storytelling, but it is a lot of great callbacks and great use of their personal history together. Now, that being said, a lot of people thought that the favor of Paul Heyman just being in Punk's corner was a little underwhelming. But I think the way that Roman sold it, first being incredulous that the idea that Heyman would even say yes, and then getting more and more angry with Heyman hesitating to say, no, I won't do it. I think that really sold the idea is maybe Seth is right. Roman doesn't care for Paul Heyman, but he's just insulted that anybody would voluntarily leave him to be in somebody else's corner, especially a guy like CM Punk.
That segment could have been poopy if it was put in the wrong hands for sure. But Seth just being like, I'm all excited to see how this gets like thrown in your face. And Roman just being like completely delusional about the whole situation was fucking perfect. It's like, what do you got?
Yeah, you said it pretty well. And then the end, I thought the ending was just pure cinema where you had CM Punk like basically doing the like, look at what you made me do, like to Seth, like right there or whatever in that case. But yeah, I put my hand up, Partham, because I'm one of those guys. I think the favor is lame. It's underwhelming. Paul Heyman's in the corner. So what? No, it's not even a debate. I mean, that's the favor. That's all it is. We have the answer. But I think you could have done more. And Partham, honestly, that one theory you had was a lot more enticing to me, even though as hard as it was to pull maybe and explain further down the road. I think there was other options as well. Paul Heyman just being in the corner of CM Punk, like the other one of the other corners. Roman is still in this match. It doesn't matter. Being in the corner is not going to do anything for CM Punk. Paul Heyman's going to help who he wants in this match, and no one knows who that's going to be. And coming out of Monday night, a lot of people think it could be Seth Rollins.
Yeah, I agree. I think Seth is very sus in the way that he addressed Paul and laid out a lot of, especially with his history with Roman Reigns. And then, of course, he hates CM Punk. He'll spin anything into Punk doesn't care about anybody. Remember, and I think Punk should be able to point this out, but Seth said, hey, when you got taken out in Madison Square Garden, Roman wasn't there because he was off in the ether, absorbing his loss. Punk wasn't there either. Yeah, Punk wasn't there because Drew McIntyre laid him out in Chicago like the previous week. So Punk wasn't going to be there regardless, whether he was on the SmackDown brand or whatever the case was. Punk has already been taken out. So of course he wasn't going to be there to try to help Paul Heyman, but I digress. Yeah, Jake, what do you think?
I want to touch on the Seth part of this and talk about Monday
Yep.
if we can.
Lay
talk
it
about
on
that.
him, Micah.
Because I've been talking, like I said a couple months ago, I know that they've been planting the seeds for the Seth heel turn, and this was the first real like moment of sinister Seth. Like he turned real vicious and evil onto Paul Heyman, and it's just anybody. They've set it up in story in kayfabe for WWE forever that if you lay hands on Paul, like you're like the worst like human being on earth. Like if you lay hands on a guy like that who can't protect themselves, it's the most dastardly thing you can do. So Seth using that to basically just manipulate him into whatever favor he wants now, I feel like was kind of the idea of the original favor in the first place to get us to this point where now Seth has one over on everybody. And I really think this whole thing is just a vehicle for this big Seth heel turn moment that they're building towards. Punk and Roman are they're untouchable. They're forces of nature. They're gonna be who they are. The real attention is on Seth Rollins. I think that they're kind of distracting us with the Heyman and the Punk and the Roman stuff. But the real development here is going to be Rollins' character change after Mania and how that affects the rest of the roster.
One thing I want to point out for how long this has been played out, right when Punk came back and became the 5th member before War Games, they had that stare down, and I think the mics picked up on it, and they put a video on it with subtitles of that, where Punk and Roman are looking at each other, and Roman's like, "What are you doing here?" And Punk's like, "It's not about me and you, it's about the wise man." And Roman goes, "That's my wise man." And Punk simply says, "We'll see." Roman replies, "I guess we will." So Punk probably had this in his mind from the word go, from the very moment he volunteered for War Games and he returned from the Hell in a Cell.
The reoccurring thing that Seth does keep like bringing up here about, well, at least to Roman, and Heyman just goes with Roman, is like, CM Punk would not still be in this situation if it wasn't for you. So
yeah, I will say that if Seth does turn with Paul Heyman, I think that he will become the most over heel in the WWE sense, which I guess this isn't surprising. I mean, Brock Lesnar.
But I mean,
like, he's not going to be getting booed.
Other than facilitating a heel turn, does it make sense to pair Paul Heyman with Seth Rollins? Does Seth need Paul Heyman?
Definitely not on the microphone, because my boy Seth Rollins is an A+.
Does he need that more? Does he need Heyman more than Punk and Roman at this moment, though? I feel like there's an argument to be made for that.
Well, when he's
credibility wise,
when he's cackling at Seth Rollins, he might need a more serious microphone with him. But he can get serious. Ever since Paul Levesque took the reins, he's allowed Seth Rollins to get a lot more serious, take off his sunglasses, and have that more sinister tone that we're seeing.
I think he's had a good balance of being the Joker-esque and then like clicking into serious when he needs to. So it's kind of like offsetting itself. Like even in that promo Monday, he started off with his weird voice and everything else, and then it just like turns, and you're like, oh shit, Seth, he's locking in now.
Yeah. Shout out Blitzkrieg on Instagram. Check in on Seth Rollins. Big Chief Grimace.
Hey, speaking of people who are able to turn from having a lot of fun and being a character to something more serious, we got a pretty serious promo on Monday Night Raw, don't you think?
From who?
Maniac. That's your cue to bring up the little tag that for Jey Uso's promo.
Oh, my bad.
He missed it. That's all right. Jey Uso, man. That's cinema.
Yeah. I mean,
probably by far the best storyline right now. I know that people are excited about Punk Rollins Reigns, but as far as overall storyline that actually has like development behind it, I guess Punk and Co going back to Survivor Series does kind of have some story now. But
well, just in the last 2 weeks, because they were in a holding pattern of Jey Uso coming out and then Gunther sneak attacking him and putting him in a sleeper hold for like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Then
he might have killed Jimmy Uso. He might have killed Jimmy Uso.
But then they brought Jimmy Uso into it, and they made this personal, and they got Now we're not getting the yeet man, we're getting the right hand man who's all locked in and serious. And he comes out, he is not yeeting with the crowd. He's got the yeet glasses on, but he's all in black. He's not doing any kind of hand gesture. And even when he gets going with his promo, and the people, of course, instinctively, as he pauses in between his sentences, which is sort of his cadence, they start yeeting in between, and he has to, gently wave him down, like, this is serious business. Let's hold off the yeeting for now. So I think they did it very brilliantly. And bringing the idea of his mother pleading with, why didn't you protect your brother? I mean, we know it was because his hand was zip tied to the freaking rope.
He chose not to. He had the option.
But just bringing his family into it, and the idea of having to talk to his mother, and now he's not afraid of him anymore, because what more can you do to hurt me? You already took my brother out. You already humiliated me, tortured me. And now I'm just going to use all that to go to WrestleMania and beat you down and become world heavyweight champion. I thought it was brilliantly done on Monday.
And shout out Gunther too. Gunther sold it great. The whole promo too. Like just the shock on his face from Jay was great.
Yeah,
dude. If Jay
was talking about his mother,
came out after his brother literally got put in a coma, and he's just like yeeting all over the place, like play my music. Like it would have been on the level of Jeff Hardy debuting in AEW, while Matt Hardy is suffering a 3-on-1 fucking beatdown. So fucking funny, dude. Why is that? Like, I don't get, like, that's why Jeff Hardy's so goated, like, because only he would do some crazy shit like that. Oh man, but yeah, that's why I think best storyline going in. We will see. I did want to go in on Joe Hendry not being a draw, but I don't know. I don't gain anything by going after TNA, and I don't like when WWE goes after AEW, so I'm not gonna
wait. So give us the condensed version.
Yeah,
the ratings gone
my
down.
only take is that people in the Wrestling with Emotion chat, and if I have to go back and dig them up, I will. We're saying that, like, if there was an overall like we were doing our promotions draft, like they would take him like with one of their first 10-round picks, which is like crazy.
I think he's with Sweatpants Wrestling.
Well, Sweatpants Wrestling is an eclectic group of wrestlers. So.
Yeah,
that is quite the draw.
It is quite the faction, I will say.
But he wasn't the only one. Listen.
No, you're right.
Sweatpants is not the only one. I can go back and I can get the chat. People who are saying like, yeah, when you're getting like that many social media views, like you're a draw. Like, what are you talking about? Where are the views and where's the draw for TNA right now? That's my only point in all of this nonsense. So, what do you think about that, Parthy?
That was Joe's first pick. Joe Hendry was Joe's first pick in the first round.
But we had already had like 3 or 4 rounds under our belt at that point, didn't we?
No,
he joined as an expansion team. I think he had like 4
people.
He did.
I'll just say, like, he wasn't picking Joe Hendry with like a top 10 pick. Like Joe Hendry was.
There was
still,
definitely
like,
a lot of people. There was a lot of people off the board already.
Yeah, it was like 30 wrestlers were off the board already at that point for sure. But speaking of off the board, I'll be honest. Another great thing that didn't happen.
So we're gonna get into this.
Well, I saw slick through it
to.
on the Chiron. I think we got to. My only take on this, and Booker T is absolutely right that Swerve chose the wrong time to do that for sure, because people came out of Dynasty talking more about Swerve Booker T and like talking about Booker T more than anything. He should have done it after Dynamite or something like that. But I think Swerve is right. So he acted wrong, but he's right in my opinion. So Slick, what do you got on this? I know you threw this
Yeah,
up.
I think obviously based on where the beef started, Vlad TV, Vlad is not like the best moral compass when it comes to interviewing guys and like getting people involved in beefs that don't really need to be a thing. I do agree with Swerve on the original conversation, and I think it was a little stupid of Booker T to like just blatantly disagree with what he said, because I don't think he was trying to be harmful in any way towards Booker T necessarily. This is a very unnecessary conflict. But Swerve escalated at a wrong time. I understand he wants to voice his opinion, say how he feels, but there was just a great pay-per-view and people let down by an ending. You didn't need to do all that after. Save it for Dynamite, like you said tonight. And then you have NXT crowds being like, "We coming for you, Swerve." So obviously that's not a viral moment in your favor after what you said on the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But very unnecessary conflict in the long run. What do you think, Parthy?
I'm still trying to look it up here. What was the original beef where Swerve went on Vlad TV and said some things about what?
Basically, what I understand,
racism in wrestling.
What I understand is he was like, Booker T was treated pretty badly under the old regime of WWE in like the 90s and stuff. Like, there's evidence on TV. Like, I'm not gonna like say, like, we all know what I'm
WrestleMania
talking
19.
about.
We all know what we're talking about.
But and then Booker T was basically just like, no, dude, like, that's wrong. Like, don't speak for me. Like, what are you talking about? You didn't need to say that. Like, I was treated very well. And it's like,
everybody knows he was treated terribly in that situation.
Yeah. So, like, why are you even disputing the fact? Like, you could have just said,
because
hey,
he wants
man,
he's defending the flag. It's like, you know,
just
if
said,
like,
yeah, like all of them are. You could have just said, hey, man, don't speak for me. Like,
You know, it's curious because we all are upset for Booker T about that, especially that particular promo leading up to WrestleMania 19, and then that ending the way it happened. But I've never heard Booker T be outspoken. Of course, he's been with the company for so long, so why would he rock
and
the boat?
still
I guess
being paid by them, actually.
Yeah, but I've never heard him, you know, whether he's been with the company or with outside of the company, you know, make a big stink out of it or say, you know, that should have gone a different direction or whatever the case may be.
well, what happens when people speak out about WWE in the mid 2000s, Parthy? You're not very long for the company, much less being in the title picture. I mean, at some point, listen, I'm a man of morals. I'm a man of values for sure. You're also looking at, like, you know, being a star and like a paycheck that takes care of your family and everything like that. Like, yeah, that's a tough thing to balance for sure.
So, certain journalists were pointing out maybe it's a little bit of a hypocrisy on Swerve's part because he's involved in a storyline with a group that was inspired by a movie about neo-Nazis, essentially, because that's where the Death Riders inspiration supposedly comes from Moxley seeing this Australian, you know, independent movie or something to that effect.
My biggest issue with Swerve is going on Vlad in the first place. I think that's where Booker T got pissed about it more than anything, is because Vlad in the hip hop community is like, the second I saw that Swerve was going on Vlad, I knew it was going to end up in some shit. I didn't know it would be with Booker T specifically, but that's what happens. He is there to create controversy within the hip hop community, and that's exactly what he did. Vlad got everything he wants out of it. Swerve should have known better.
Him and the guy, or like the guy,
or pitting people against each other. He stirs shit up, and Swerve should have known better. But I think the issue, what Swerve's like original sin here, and what his sin is on Sunday too, is a little bit of clout chasing, going on Vlad, saying fuck Booker T. Like, it's to grab the quick headlines. Is it going to benefit him in the long run?
Swerve does kind of love a good clout chase.
He does. Yeah, he definitely. And there's plenty of examples. But Booker T also plenty of examples throughout the years of black wrestlers complaining about
these
Booker
numbers
T not
kind of hit
speaking
like
up
crazy
them,
though.
so.
I mean, this tweet says it all with Booker T like trying to defend.
Like, I mean, and the fact that both left the company is crazy. So,
no, Swerve got fired from the.
Oh yeah.
Which is even crazier when you break it down now.
Crazy. But very interesting. Again, it's
now he's the most over baby face.
Yeah, but
AEW
NXT crowds are chanting Tony fumbled when Ricky Saints is winning a fucking belt.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't have to get into the NXT crowd and the thoughts on themselves. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
Good episode. Looking forward
to we got WrestleMania 9 documentary dropping on Peacock. Everybody hates Hogan. Kayfabe at its basically like final last hurrah peak. Like, I'm looking forward to that.
It looked cool. I saw the snippet you sent. Just seeing Undertaker backstage, and as soon as a camera is in his direction, him going, "What the fuck is that for?" Like, just because he's out of character is awesome. So I'm intrigued. I want to see more.
Seeing Undertaker out of character in his old, zombie dead man gimmick with the gray gloves and everything, that is kind of jarring.
Crazy.
It is for sure. Well, we'll see what happens. But thanks for tuning in, obviously, on Wrestling with Emotion, brought to you by Batavia Downs, the region's premier entertainment destination. This has been the show where it's not wrestling with your conscience. It's not wrestling with your budget. For Micah, Partham, and Slick, it is wrestling with emotion.
We